If I can have a test on one, happy to be.
Need a whistle that.
I'm gonna call the budget committee to order. I don't know.
You got that? Okay, all right, I'm gonna, I'll call the, select board, town Damariscotta to order for joint budget meeting for, this thing, there we go. All right, with that, I know we need a recap, we went over a whole, no, we don't need a recap last night. Do I have any questions? All right. The recording is up
Yes.
online.
How about introducing everybody?
Hang on, yeah, just a second, let's get, so, yeah, so that's up on the recording's up on the YouTube page, already, so that's there. For anyone that wants to, take a look at that, if you missed it, or others that are curious about what we're talking about, this process, try and keep those up to date. Okay, do we want to do, I know we did introduction last night, do we want to go?
Yeah,
Right again.
Sherry's right, that if somebody.
Yeah.
Moves into this thing, if they ought to know who we are.
Yeah, we can start, just go.
We start over there.
All right, Gary Rosenthal.
Susan McAllister,
Larry Seidlinger.
Connie Magistrelli, Mary Devlin, Jenny Beegan,
Dick McLean,
Leah Bucky,
Tom Anderson, Dan Hunter,
Darryl Frazier.
Eric Josephson.
Andrea Kasharian, Tara Pinkham,
Andy Dorr, town manager.
Leslie Wysocki.
And everybody got it
We
right.
got one in the corner back there.
Oh.
Yeah. And who's showering on?
Sherry?
Yes. Shari Sage.
We have Shari on video.
Gonna probably keep it off for the most part.
Okay, so as long as she, yeah.
You're closed on, or? Okay.
Shari, just let us know if you have, we can't see on video, so if you have any questions, you do
Yeah,
the,
speak up.
the hand up or something there to let us know, okay?
Yes, that'll work for me. Thank you.
Can't see this, so. All right, Andy, you wanna
I will.
start out?
Turn it over to
Hand it over to you.
So, tonight the plan is to work through the public safety, as well as, police budgets, so police, fire, ambulance, hydrants, and emergency management. Work through those. We're gonna start off with police. For those that haven't had a chance yet to meet, the new police chief, Chief Eric Josephson is here with us tonight. I'm gonna take you through the numbers. In fairness to him, I kind of started, I think, on the 29th, 26th or 29th. The day. So I've shared it, we've gone over it. He understands, the numbers that are in the boxes, but hasn't had a chance to really put his effort and kind of seeing where he wants to take things and, building a number different than what we've had kind of to continue this. So I'm gonna go through the numbers. I'll let him talk a little bit about the assessment and kind of where he at the moment is seeing where he'd like to try and move things in this first year here. So with that, the first couple pages, starting on page 65, just gave a kind of a general overview of the PD. Try to hit some high points of the things that have been accomplished so far this year. The two bigger ones, well, three big pieces so far. The hiring of him. We hired back this summer our new administrative assistant after the former had resigned. We completed an assessment of the department through the Maine Chiefs of Police Association. Some of you might be aware of that. I know some of you read one of the public meetings we had. There's a few of the pages of the report behind this cover sheet. The full document is available on the website. If you look at the PDF version, there's a hyperlink in there. You can click, it goes right to it. Otherwise, it's on the town's website, on the police department page. So if someone goes to the town, the website, hover over the government tab and see the department list, hit police department, on that landing page, you'll see there's a quick little paragraph and a link to that full assessment. What I included were the first few pages that give you an overview of what the assessment's about and kind of how they go through the process. And then, starting on page 74, there's, I think, 3 pages of the recommendations that came out of that assessment. Now I'm gonna stick to the numbers. I'll let Chief kind of highlight some of the things that stood out to him so far on that, and again, kind of that vision for what we want to accomplish. Overall, the budget as presented for the police department my proposal is up 7.8%, 9.66% with the department's request, but the only difference between the two is related to whether or not we want to bring back the parking ambassador enforcement position for those summer months. And talked briefly with the chief about that, and on the surface, it sounds like it's worth at least a conversation, and so I'll let him kind of talk about where he sees the value in talking about adding that in, but that's really the only difference between our two columns. That aside, the increases, $77,000. $70,000 in my proposal, mostly attributed to health insurance. It wasn't just the increase in premium for the police department. Last year when we budgeted, it was just a change in personnel and what was being accessed for the different plans. If someone has a spouse and or dependents, the difference in price from a single to that is almost $20,000. And through the way of the CBA, this is what we provide. It's 95%, no more than $250 per pay period for the officers. So it's just realizing we're paying that now, we're using some carry forward from unspent money from FY25. So it's not new for next year, it's what we have this year. So that's one of the bigger changes. This, it's one of the downsides to a couple of years ago. It looked like we were over budgeting every year. We were assuming that the status might change. If someone's taking the buyout for the premium, or what would otherwise be a $34,000 expense for the town, and we buy that out because they get it through their spouse or something, it's 25%. So the difference between that 25% and the full value that we pay was a big swing. And we had a couple of folks that took the buyout. And so when that change happened, we had to do that. But in the years previously, we were accounting that could happen in a year. And so we were kind of over budgeting every year. And by funding the payroll liability reserve, what it allows us to do is in a given year, if we needed to, we could use the reserves, but we'd have to catch up the following. And that's what we're seeing. Some of this stuff, some of that $38,000 there was attributed to that. So 190,000 of the 212 on line 4040. 190,000 of it is the premiums. 22,000 is reserved for the HRA the town has for employees. So we'll pay a portion of the co-insurance for them, which builds towards that deductible that they otherwise have to meet. The other substantial increases of that 70,000 are mostly related to the direct personnel costs. So the wages and then the payroll taxes associated with that. Let's see, the overall increase on that particular line was about $17,000. Again, that's mostly contract driven. The CBA is in place through June of 27. And then the chief has a contract, and then we got one position. Otherwise, in that's the admin assistant that's not by contract, falls under the personnel policy. So of that, direct personnel costs represent 86%, majority of which are they're locked in the personnel policy or their own contract. Plenty else to talk about within that. Any questions on any other line? I just sort of highlight the major ones that were driving some of that 70,000.
Folks, just if anybody has any questions on, just reference the code there, so we can all follow along with questions on it. Code on the far left. Can you talk the software license increase?
Yes.
Which line?
That is line 1338.
1338. The TriTech or IMC taken a little longer than the county anticipated, but I think it was it 2 years ago? The county, my understanding is IMC is being phased out and it's not going to be supported. The county started this process of they've identified a new software they want to transition to. I believe it was supposed to be live this past November, if not mistaken. And then it was pushed to April, and then it was June, and most recently I've heard November of 26. And so we're going to get into the next fiscal year. I'm assuming we're going to end up having to pay for that annual license fee for that next fiscal year. And so you'll see in the revenue line for the fund balance offset, as I was explaining yesterday, I don't expect that we'd be paying double license fees the following year. And so I would propose that you utilize the fund balance in that case to cover that second software license fee, because they're going to have to, as I talked to Tara Bell, and there's going to be likely to pay for that still. Likely not.
paying for two in one person.
Yeah.
And so that's the change there. The Central Square is the new system. And the chief was sharing it, if I understand right, that Central Square bought out IMC.
Correct.
And so there's a cost to go to the new company's version.
But if they're the same company, but.
Well, they bought the other one, so they paid that one out to leave, and now you gotta pay to get integrated with the county. But the county through, my understanding is through the ARPA funds, when it was presented to us originally, we were gonna have to pay like $40,000 to our share of this new software, and then the county was able to reassess the use of ARPA funds and utilize understanding is those funds to be able to buy it for everyone, to the startup cost, and then we'd be on the hook for the maintenance like we are and have been for a while.
So what is the maintenance? Like
You have to
5,000,
stabilize.
8,000?
Yeah.
You know, for the software license, after you pay the initial cost?
We're not paying an initial cost. My understanding is we're assuming it'll be in the same ballpark. I don't know. I think we actually just got the bill. Is it $8,300?
Yes.
We just got the bill. I saw it in the box. The board will see it. So $8,300 for this new Central Square. So slightly higher than what I had in there. It was an estimated cost up until we just saw that.
So. I mean, where does 20, so the extra money is for the other software that you already have?
IMC, the one that's in place now, that's transitioning out.
Okay, so that's costing, like 12,000 or something.
7950, 7,950.
Okay, and the other one's 8 some, so where do we get 27, all the other stuff, the cameras and.
Yeah, so the body camera is another $4,200 a year roughly. They have the cruiser cams, 5,200. That's to have access for support for the devices, but also the data storage capability. That's all uploaded to the cloud as a docking station and uploads, and they're able to maintain and keep and preserve that record should it need to be accessed. The other ones in there are a little bit lower. Again, an Office 365 license. Here, sure if you're familiar with that. The Metro fee, I don't remember exactly what that one's for. Power DMS, another one I don't remember exactly what it was for, but it's an annual recurring cost to support department needs.
Is that an annual, is that gonna be the annual fee moving forward, Andy?
I'm not anticipating that we would have the IMC for FY 28, because that's the system that's being phased out. So you'd do less 7950 plus whatever increases are more normal, whether it's 3% or whatever the increases are thereafter for typical standard software cost increases. But that should be reduced at that number at least. Unless we add other services.
Well, that's nice.
That's where we're using the fund balance to offset that. It's not a direct raise, allocation.
I changed the topic. It's sort of more of a larger question about the academy. So essentially, we will have had somebody in the academy 2 years in a row. Is that what's happening?
Yes, we do not have.
And the additional cost that comes with that, correct? And that.
The hope is we don't have to have that every year.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
So,
okay.
so with that question.
Which line are we talking about?
Yeah.
It's in various lines, that's.
Could we go to 62 mileage?
Yep.
Can we reference the page numbers as well, please?
Sure.
I'm having trouble
80.
following something, so.
Page 80.
Thanks.
You had put in here $5,500. And then it looks like, and my understanding is you subsequently, Xed out the officer traveling back and forth. Does that $5,500 come down then?
That's the amount we're requesting.
Even though he's not going back and forth?
We anticipate they will. That cost, that 5,500 should cover it. The way I've got it set up is if we hire someone not knowing who's gonna fill an opening, if someone comes to us with 25 years experience, in the STEP program that's afforded in the CBA, we could lateral entry someone at step 15. And so you wanna jump to the next page. Line 9065, patrol officer 4, this is the 78,000, that's at step 15.
That's the max that someone might come in at. If you go up a few lines to 80-50, the costs associated with going to the academy largely fall on overtime. You gotta pay the person to be there. They're working more than 40 hours while they're there, so you gotta compensate for the other time work beyond a assumed 8-hour day. 5 days a week, and then you gotta backfill, in theory, that position unless the board gives direction otherwise. And so those items in bold, were some of the changes, but the $15,000 is the anticipated cost for the academy shift coverage, so backfilling while that person's out. The 7,000 represents what they'd be in overtime while they're at the academy for 18 weeks. And so the difference, the way I worked it out, if you go to the page 82, sorry, 83. If you run it out at step one at $26 an hour and all the overtime costs, and you compare it to someone coming in at step 15 with no overtime cost, basically the gap that we have to be prepared to pay to put someone through that academy would be the 22,000, which you'll see there in the undesignated fund balance. Offset of 22,545. So I'm trying to somewhat split that difference between a couple of them, but not double book it, not over budget. So that academy cost hopefully wouldn't be a recurring annual fee, and so that'd be another place where I'd suggest you eventually utilizing your fund balance as a $1 million expense.
So I'm gonna get back to Dan's comment that we funded this activity for the past 3 years. How did it go from us spending 31,000 in 2025 to have somebody go through the academy? Why did it jump to 5,500? I mean, I know hotel costs have gone up a little bit, but that seems.
Which line are you referring to?
At 62 on the 80 again, back to the travel and meeting expenses. It seems like we did this twice. And we're almost doubling the cost to do it again this year.
So it's not just academy. That's to support all training for all officers if they gotta travel to go to do that. It's covering the lodging fees if someone goes, we have it in here to support the chief to attend the IAC annual conference.
Had anyone funded that previously?
Correct. So some of that travel expense had been booked to the line 6253. You see that one's down slightly, $450, I think it is.
6253.
Yep. And was 7,500. We spent, you'll see in that previous year, $11,669 there in FY25. Some of that was actual travel costs related to going to a conference. So while one lines up the 2,500 to support the travel costs associated with training and try to just bring some of those other ones, it's more of like how we define and book it off. But training's a big one in that department overview that was provided just to make us support it. It's something that's reiterated in the assessment document, making sure that we're sending folks to the appropriate training. So it's all to support that effort.
So you shifted some of the monies from the 6253.
It just made more sense to have travel costs, travel line rather than buried in a.
So we should be adding those two lines together to do the comparison.
Mhm.
With the little to no crime that we have, do we really need another officer?
Not asking for another officer, in addition to what we have, we're trying to maintain the 4 patrol positions and the chief. There's an opening right now, but there's one that just went through the academy and still needs to finish his FTO program. There's another one that still needs to go to the academy.
Do we really need?
Well, we're sending another person to the academy again?
Correct.
What commitment do we have from the officers that we send to the academy that they're staying? Are they?
None.
And we just.
We just pay them to go and pay all the associated expenses.
So they use us and to
Well,
further their career?
Yeah. And they
Well,
get,
I mean, let me just help, there's a couple things maybe I'm hearing here. If someone goes to the academy, finishes, and we pay that cost, and they have an epiphany and realize that policing's not for them, then they leave. We can't control that. We don't have any agreement in place where they're obligated to pay back anything for that investment. If someone goes to a different agency in law enforcement, the state statute exists that they, within a 5-year period, and it's prorated essentially, that agency must pay us essentially a dollar value acknowledgement. So there's maybe a couple things I was hearing.
So what's been our experience? That they stay or that they go some?
I haven't had a lot of history here, but my understanding is we've been very fortunate to have some pretty good tenured folks or folks that came with the blue pin, so to speak, are already certified. We've had it the last couple of years. The former sergeant left for a police chief position in Pittsburgh. So that created an opening. And we had one retire. So we created those two openings recently for us in the last 16 months. Those happen to be filled with folks that need to go to the academy.
And did those people that went to the academy stay with us?
Well, one just finished and he's still working for us. The other one still needs to go. So there's still, one.
Is there any way we can get a commitment from them? I mean, if send them to the academy and pay their way? That's up
That's up to the select
banks
board
do that.
and working within the CBA.
Yeah, CBA with them, so I don't know.
CBA is the union contract.
Yeah.
CBA is the union contract,
And what is CBA stand?
Collective bargaining
bargaining
agreement,
agreement.
the union.
That's something the select board can take into consideration in the future if they want to try and.
I
talk
mean,
about it.
historically, I'll reach into my history, if I may, Connie, and say that, longevity has been really consistent for
So we're a nice town to be.
for decades. Yeah, and I was gonna speak the same thing.
Enough is it.
Historically.
Yeah, I know that when I hear that
that
one is leaving, it startles me.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, it's uncommon. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good job.
Are we anticipating any vacancies?
Other than the one that still needs to go to the academy, I mean, no, we're not expecting any, but
So, I mean, so the one that has to go to the academy, he's been hired?
yeah, he's on our staff right now.
Going back to the mileage line, 60, 62. Nothing's been spent yet this year.
That's because they like to wait to the end of they like to wait till they have a chunk of a change. Like they're not gonna go to a training and then get a $15 check, they turn it in after several trainings,
Right,
and then they get like $100 check.
but for the whole year, there's been nothing.
Right, because we just started in July, and they won't submit their mileage probably until May or June, when it's a hefty check for them to get.
I see.
Yeah.
It's misleading at this.
I have some smaller money questions. As we talked a lot about software and moving into, I don't know, the 21st century. Do we really still need to have expenses in there for page 78, line 1612 landlines, page 2317, can we purchase those books online rather than hard copies? And then for office supplies, we're just not spending the money that we've already budgeted. Do we really need to have those lines be so high? And I know it's only a few $1,000s, but I'm sure we can figure out somewhere else to spend it.
Landlines, those are lines into the desks, for the admin assistant, the chief, I think there's probably a couple others downstairs. That affords them the ability to talk to whoever's calling, it includes a fax line, so we can communicate with whoever needs to send and receive faxes from our agency, which is still common practice for some. Unfortunately. The books, my understanding is and it's a regular expense, that is to be able to have what do you call them, the statute book.
Hard copy?
Yes, they keep them right.
Did they go online?
They keep them right in the cruiser.
It's a matter of having it in your hand, right in your bag in the cruiser. You can open it up and go at it instead of pulling out your phone and trying to read it on your phone and distracting yourself.
Oh, they don't have, I thought they had little laptops in them.
Yeah, the tablets are mounted.
Yeah, they're still all in that thing,
tablets.
and you're gonna be scrolling through it. I'd rather have the officers going through the books.
I mean, like
plus
the
work that-
rest of us read our stuff.
What's that?
The rest of us.
Not you.
If technology fails, they have nothing in the field. If they don't have cell service, essentially, I mean, it's possible they find themselves in a situation where technology doesn't work, battery's dead or servicing.
And
They
all they have
have.
for the statutes.
And then just on page 79, the other one was office supplies. I had this budget for regular office supplies too. I mean,
Yeah, right.
if we would move away from a paper, I am into
Wait, line 3216, the question is, which paper?
3216, just in general, we're not spending it.
3216?
3216 on page 79.
3-year average at $5,300.
Yeah, we spent 11, 2024, we spent
but-
2.
2025, we spent 2,800.
Why are we producing so much?
What happened in 2000?
I know.
I don't think it that
With the 2024 budgeted down to there,
Budgeted 24, $2,059.
2,000, yeah, $1,000.
2,000.
Again, we're trying to make sure there's a budget available. It's the 3-year average at $5,300. 3,000 is the same as this year. We thought that was reasonable, as though costs go up every year for supplies, but making sure they have what they need to support the agency.
It's about a printer or some shit. All digital down to
We're
gravity.
spending a lot on software and stuff, you know, electronics, internet access.
And I'm all digital.
Yeah, that may be a math average, but it's not a typical.
Nope.
So that
If the
number
budget
is
committee
not,
wants to recommend a different number, that's certainly the place.
yeah, that number, that $5,300 number is not meaningful to me. Because does not really represent what we've been doing. It's skewed by that.
Skewed by
2020, yeah, maybe it was something to purchase, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the
The laptops, maybe.
2025
And
actually,
they-
2,800 was
Yeah,
supposed
I
to
don't
go.
remember, that's
A few years ago.
But yes.
Pull open that.
$3,000 for office supplies was paper pens, envelopes.
So,
I'm gonna wait for revenue. Our next question has to do with revenue, so.
So,
When we get to that, I guess expense question.
the vehicles,
Andy, our police budget has gone up $300,000 in the last 3 years. Do you anticipate the next 3 years to be that much of an increase?
I don't know.
I think we need to really seriously reconsider.
I asked that question, when do we get to the point of, we look to join the county police force and take the burden off the town of Damariscotta? At $1 million a year and a $100,000 a year increase, when do we say, let's look at the county police force covering the Damariscotta? And maybe that's a question for the select board rather than.
yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think that's a question.
But even still,
Budget committee.
The fact,
Larry,
the
right now.
fact is out there,
Yeah.
we were $600 and some odd $1,000 3 years ago, and we're almost $1 million now. At almost $100,000 a year increase. Are we as taxpayers expecting, are we expecting a $100,000 a year increase in police department cost a year?
I think with the cost of personnel, like the cost of health insurance and other liability insurance.
I understand all the costs,
It probably will. If we have a.
and that's where I go. Do we then look at the county where they already have the infrastructure in place as an administrative assistant? That was $50,000-$60,000. They've already got some cruises that they can sell. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ways that.
Why don't we
look
I
at it.
wanted to suggest that we refocus on what the purpose of these meetings are.
Yes, thank you. I was just gonna, yeah.
Well,
That's what I'm asking.
Let's pull it together. Right now, we have a budget in front of us.
Yeah.
It's not about whether or not we have a department.
No, I'm just asking,
We've got to look-
what we should anticipate from a budget committee standpoint.
Yeah.
Should we
I mean,
look at a 10% increase in the police department?
The simple answer is, Larry, everything's gone up. So it's not just PD, but everything has gone up. Insurances go up, cost of everything goes up. So the simple answer is yes. I mean, I don't see anything, cost of living, cost of doing business has not gone down in the last 10, 20, 30
Well, I'm
years.
just looking at
The simple. the
I'm looking
simple
at
answer is
payroll
yes.
increases of 25%.
Sure.
There aren't too many working people out there that get 25% increase every year.
I have, overall, but you do increases in, yeah. Got a 5-man crew and it goes up exponentially
You
every,
pay your guys 25% more this year?
just the whole payroll
I
package.
can just go on record saying, let employee get the 25% increase.
No, it's not true. No. All right, everyone, let's focus. Budget in front of us.
Are the police cars in here too, the vehicle?
No, that
That's
was
in another
capital.
budget. So that's part of the capital budget. That's not even part of
Yeah,
this
right.
budget.
The replacement of those.
Replacement.
Capital budget, the operating expense, repairs, fuel, all that's in the operating budget.
You wanna talk about the seasonal parking enforcement?
Sure.
Yeah.
Number
So,
It is 9067 on page 82.
yeah.
I'm curious what the new chief had to say about it. He had some thinking on it, so, yeah.
I do, I looked at looked at the study, and I looked at the numbers that were popping up. You have a 4-man department and authorized for 3 part-timers. You're generating 10,000 calls for service a year. So about 3,000 and change of that is property checks, which are an important part of a small town law enforcement. Even in the city, that's the way it is. But you're still generating over 6,000 calls per year. That's a huge number for a department this size. My last department, I was a contracted chief. We had 9 officers. We had 4 part-timers and we were generating 6,000 calls for service per year. So the officers are out there doing, right now it's very slow. I'll be the first to admit it. I look at the call sheets, hoping to see all kinds of numbers there. I've been here all of 8 days. And the numbers aren't popping up like I'm used to in larger departments. But it's winter time and it will pick up. I think you said there, Andy said they're putting 12,000 people across the bridge every year. Especially during the summertime. That's a lot of people. You are the main route, everything goes through town. You need the officers to be able to take care of that. That being said, it's very tight down there. I used to come here when I was younger with my wife and kids. Parking is always an issue then, it still is now. It's very tight in downtown. If you have parking enforcement down there, they can take care of that and also serve as an ambassador to the town. Where they're able to answer questions as far as businesses in the area, directions, whatever the case may be, but they're strictly addressing the parking issue that you have downtown. Where if you call officers to address that kind of thing, you have 1 officer on the road. You pull that officer and you have them get a large pickup truck. Downtown is not gonna be able to maneuver very well in and out of the cars and whatnot. It's gonna take time to get in, time to get out. If there's a call elsewhere. So I think having the parking enforcement alleviates that pressure for the officers so that they can maintain and commit to their law enforcement duties. As opposed to all parking enforcement is part of that. It's a smaller part as opposed to a domestic car accident, whatever the case may be or all. So I think it's worthwhile. I think we had talked about 2 months during the summertime. We've already had some interest, not even talking about it, just people calling and asking. Hey, listen, I know somebody would be interested, they'd be perfect for it. It's a good stepping stone for that to get involved in law enforcement. So I think overall it's beneficial. Whether they generate enough revenue to support their position, I don't know what those numbers look like. We won't know until the end of the year when we can see.
Well, they haven't in the past, and I think we had 2 nice people, 2 people that were too nice in doing the enforcement. So there wasn't a lot of enforcement per se, there was a lot of discussion, but.
Well,
We also
yeah,
have good fine payment systems in place, so people just throw their
Part-
tickets away.
part of
That's
what's
the problem.
happened with that position, we, the board, we cut it last year in the effort to take something out of the budget. I see it firsthand. It's a worthwhile position. I kind of regret cutting it, seeing what happened downtown last year, just with parking and whatnot. But part of what you see is to speak to the chief's point, I don't know if you're ever gonna see a direct correlation that the position is gonna pay for itself. Generally, what happens is why they use the term ambassador is because a good, and I've seen the last couple of years, we've had some really, really good folks down there. We had 2 young ladies in a row that were just awesome. They kept things moving, so not a lot of people got fined because they weren't parking over time. They weren't parking in, handicap spots. They were being talked to. The boat parking they were being moved along. So you didn't necessarily see tickets being written because it wasn't happening. Because somebody was down there. Now, I know last year we had nobody down there and it's a free for all. The voters parking, there's just no enforcement. To the chief's point, 1 officer on patrol, it could spend all day down there chasing people around the summertime, and it's not really effective for a patrol officer. So again, it's whether we can, add that in, and I'm not advocating for the money, but just talking about that position always has been a worthwhile position that was used as a ambassador position, so to speak. It's a great spot, but.
Well, this
But
year,
that's why.
because of the chaos of Route 1, that's
Yeah.
why we had the 3-hour delay through town.
Oh, yeah, there's multiple things happening, yeah, and then we went into
Protesters
the,
Parking on the side of the street
Yeah.
illegally.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening, yeah, you're right, yeah.
But also we need to be able to hopefully enforce the EV stations, that those people move along. I mean, it's to our benefit to make sure that people don't stay there past their time, or people park there illegally and we're not getting the money from the EV stations.
Yeah, we do have a revenue source down there
And we
now, that
do,
needs to be
and we need
maintained.
to protect it.
So,
Can also consider raising the fine. when they park in the,
Yeah, but if they
when they're
park
parking in
there,
areas they're not supposed to. I mean, I get a 25, some of the tourists, you get a $25 ticket, whatever,
Yeah,
it's
they just-
cheaper than paying for parking.
And if I recall too, maybe I've been here long enough, but the parking fines, how, those don't go directly to town, right? Don't they go, the ordinance, but
The fines that are established in our ordinances that we're enforcing stay with us. Any speeding ticket, any state enforced statute, that all goes to the state and if things personal process.
yeah, this portion goes
But
out.
all the local ordinance enforcement, that money would stay with.
Yeah, okay, I couldn't remember, yeah.
Would parking meters be cheaper than an employee?
What?
Kiosk. Third rail, yeah.
parking meters are not gonna help us with the EV.
Well, so it's also not gonna go and
It's not gonna help us.
reduce radar detail and help the folks that need help either, but it, to the point of regulating parking and, versus having a part-time position at $15,000, I haven't run the numbers to see where
For
it's come out.
$15,000, we don't need someone, an ambassador who's gonna talk about their businesses, that's what the chamber is for. And we're open on Saturday.
To your point too, like even with, conversation in the past with like a parking kiosk, how they do them, but they still have to enforce. You can get a ticket and go park,
Yeah.
but somebody has to go and check to see if you're over time,
In
so,
Camden,
yeah.
they do that,
Yeah.
where they don't have parking meters, because that's a big pain in the neck for snow.
Yeah, it's usually done with a kiosk
It's
now.
done with a kiosk and
Yeah.
you put in some money and you get a little thing for your windshield.
Yeah, but somebody still needs to physically check that and make sure you're
Write
not.
the
parking
tickets,
for
they
time.
don't actually move you along, because they don't know where you are in town.
Yeah.
But they write you a ticket.
So,
But if you write enough tickets, people stop doing
But what happens if the ticket doesn't get paid?
They don't,
Sounds like.
yeah,
yeah.
well,
Especially when they're out of
so then it becomes an issue, is it worth going to small claims court for a
Right.
$20 ticket,
Right.
which becomes an issue too,
So
so.
maybe instead of putting a cruiser up at the school, doing traffic stops, where that money's gonna go to the state, put the cruiser downtown where the money's gonna come from us.
Yeah, I think.
There's an idea.
Yeah, so,
I think it's helpful too, I mean, to have a better, none of this, we're not deciding anything today, but I think it's really important that we think about what the value of having the PD is, not so much the response to a dollar amount. And so what do we value the most here? The idea of taking the cruiser out of the school zone during school hours when people are coming through and it's supposed to be an enforced.
There's no
15 mile-
school in summertime yet.
When it's in a 15-mile-an-hour school zone, I think is an important thing to think about. I don't imagine we have officers sitting up there during the summertime when there's no school in session. But when school is in session, and the idea of removing that cruiser from the school zone, we can talk about the value and where is that resource better spent? Should it be downtown when there's no one there during school hours in the morning? Or is it better spent protecting the best of our ability, kids and traffic coming in and out of the school? Because most of you know that's a pretty heavy traffic zone during those hours.
We're talking July and August when school's not in session anyway.
For the
But it's
part-time
ambassador.
parking ambassador.
For the parking ambassador, you're talking July and August, aren't you, chief? Correct. Well, the school's not in session July and August.
It's not, and I would just encourage folks to think about the traffic and parking ordinance that the town's put in place and expecting us to enforce, whether it's the business community, someone coming to shop. We get those complaints, police department gets those complaints, so it's really an ordinance thing, so I think we should look at our ordinances. Look at and examine the values of the community and what's expected of our department before we decide whether or not we find value or reduce it by position. You think you need to have those honest conversations of what do people want? This assessment was meant to be a good starting point to have those conversations. There's a lot in there to choose, 3 pages of things to think about doing. Some cost money, some are less service, if you choose one way or the other. So I think, with the new chief here, and that's something that I know is on the radar, with select board having commissioned this and with fresh eyes on this, is to try and host some of those conversations with the board and the community over the course of the year, in which at some point, hopefully he can share, if we get time to share some of that, what he's seeing initially. So I think there's some really good things that we can bite off that are value and benefit without much cost.
So you're still recommending we stay with your recommendation under management proposal?
That's up to the two independent.
It's up to the two separate.
I think it comes back to what do you value? Do you have it in there? I put a 0 in there, most of the force of the conversation.
Yeah.
I think if the board and the community, and there's multiple perspectives there. You got the business community who are expecting turnover for customers. You got the same business community needing parking for their staff. When we did that parking lot project, 50% of those spots were needed for staff, which means they don't have customer turnover. And so it was interesting to hear those challenges that exist with their parking. Some businesses have chosen the expense of leasing parking from private property owners. That's still available to folks down there so that their staff.
We're our own worst enemy downtown.
But There's a lot of layers to this. I think we need to have conversations about with the town. If we don't want to enforce parking stuff, we shouldn't have the ordinance saying 3 hours is a maximum. I think there's a few things that they're doing because the town voted in these local regulations. Maybe they need to change.
I do have a question. If it was decided that this is a good thing to have, an ambassador or parking enforcement, whatever you want to call it, is there a way to compromise between the 15 now and 0? In 24 and 25 was 10,000, 11,000 and 25.
So the 15,000 represents what's expected in the traffic and parking ordinance between Memorial Day and Labor Day. As someone covering all the hours, it's expected to be enforced at a pretty close to minimum wage.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the hours put in for there.
No compromising on that number.
I mean, there is in the sense that how active is the town wanting to be in enforcing the ordinance that's in place? That dollar value affords a 16 or $17 an hour position for the hours that are established in the ordinance for enforcement.
Okay.
So if is there room for less? Yes, we should probably look at the ordinance and find out how are we gonna adequately enforce the time that's not otherwise
Or you don't
afforded in
want to
that.
pay them less than they could make at McDonald's. Right?
Yeah.
It's very possible that number I'm carrying would be less than what they make it in McDonald's. I don't know what the rate is right now, but I think it's $16 or $17 an hour starting, so.
For sure.
That job.
Does anybody else have any direct questions on any of the line items?
Chief, could you just tell me again, what was it, 8,000 calls in last fiscal year or six?
It was, by the time of the report, it was, I wanna say it was 8 and change, and it went up,
And that,
towards the end
what
of the
time
year.
period?
January 1st to January 1st.
Of what?
2025?
Yep.
Okay, you said
And
80.
it was roughly 3,000 and change were self-initiated building checks, which are fantastic, especially if you're a business owner. You're away on vacation, whatever the case may be. But that's still a substantial number. With, like I said, we had 9 people and 3 or 4 part-timers who were putting up the same numbers in a 5,600 populated town.
One of the things that we brought up last year and we talked about having recorded as data is how many of those calls in the summer are related to the campground. So we had a conversation about whether or not the campground could be absorbing some of the cost of calls that go to them. So I know you don't have that data right now, but just if you could, but that was one of the things we had asked and tracked last year.
Yeah, all the, I always get it wrong, we'll say calls through service, but I played it wrong. Anything that's in there as a data point is typically tagged to an address. And whether it's an interaction that warranted the documentation with a resident, or whether it was a traffic crash on the campground road.
Yeah, I remember.
And so there's a way, as long as it was tagged with an address, that we'd be able to relatively easily.
Can you also track those calls, like are they domestic violence calls or are they a skunk under the porch calls?
Yeah, I mean, the software is pretty powerful. I don't have a great sense.
As long as it's entered properly, yes. It
But it would
depends.
be interesting to know what the, what the highest percentage of calls are for.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can get the 2025 full data set out and available. Last year, we provided 22, 3, 4, and whatever it was for the first quarter in 25. It was interesting, but I mean, it's able to track as accurate as the officers enter it in terms of the start time and the end time. You know, it'll show 8,000 calls for service and how much time is spent on certain types of calls as they're categorized. You'll start to see, you know, I know we got into it last year with regards to property checks, 3 or 4,000, whatever it was. The average time spent on those each was about 19 or 20 seconds.
What I was getting at is that some of those calls that maybe a highway department people could handle that don't necessarily need to be a police officer.
Potentially, depending on when it's happening and when it's responding, yeah.
I understand that.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to look at training and liability too for certain things.
Yeah, if there's something in the road that's dead and it's Saturday morning, we're not gonna call the public works in for overtime, but if
Just
an
need to
officer's on the road, then they can, if they can handle it, otherwise they do the best they can and we'll deal with it. If we need to bring someone in from there, we can.
Any revenue?
I had a revenue question. In the report that was submitted by the, police chiefs or whatever, they, said that because we have a certain certification, we could access revenue from the Maine Municipal Association to offset liability insurance. And I wanted to know if we've done that, and if not, can we do that?
go back and refresh myself as to what that revenue source is. I know, with regards to liability, there was certainly a decrease in the cost by being credited. There are, a
Yeah, you
couple
can
of,
get credits and things, so if we could just look at that and maybe get some more numbers on whether or not that line could go down or if that revenue can come up. That would be helpful, thanks.
What line is it?
It was in the revenue line and then the reference to the credit, the liability insurance was in the actual chief's report, which I don't have open for.
there's the reduction in the insurance coverage premium by being certified. That was realized a couple of years ago. They got accredited, I think, in.
Yeah, it was in the assessment report.
But maybe there's some other angles there that we haven't.
Yeah. And it
Taking advantage
doesn't
of.
save for me in the
Possibly,
way,
yeah.
where it is, again, search.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no other revenue questions, this might be a good jump off point to the report and allow the chief to share a little bit about kind of what he's seen so far and. Where he might lead us in the next year with some of these things that there's a lot to digest in that report.
It's on page 14 of the report. The full report, over.
Okay.
Because we're
In the assessment.
NLEAP accredited,
Oh, yeah.
it, means we are eligible for.
Future savings.
It's of the police report,
Oh,
but we don't have it, you only have to highlight it in your book. I went and read it. Some nerd. Good for you.
Signal liability.
Yeah, that's all related to the accreditation process, what we did.
Yeah, okay.
It's definitely worth it. It's standardized. It's top-notch standards that are accepted nationwide, that they're the best of the best. You know, so as long as you have it all in line and you're meeting certain requirements, there is a drastic reduction in the liability insurance for the carriers of the towns. Every little bit helps, especially 25%. I won't discuss the parking attendance since that didn't go very well. But
No, one of your officers, you know, do with public relations walking down the street there.
Well, and that's the thing, you know, when you do have one officer on the road and they're locked up in traffic or they're centralized for a long period of time during the day, even if they're stuck downtown, they're not taking care of the rest of the time. So if you're complaining about traffic in your neighborhood, the street over in front of your business, we don't have the time to address that because that officer is downtown being an ambassador, writing tickets and whatnot. So that's why I lean towards the parking ambassador to try to lighten that load a little bit. I think the report that was written was very well done. It's right on point from everything I've seen in the 8 days I've been here. The department overall is pretty strong and the officers are pretty strong also. I'm quite impressed with what's happening there. The problem is training. You know, you want to hold on to your office, you want to know what kind of guarantee you have this officer's gonna be here next year. You can throw all the money in the world you want at the officer as far as the payroll and leave if they're bored, if they're not getting what they need, if they're looking for advancement. If they're looking for training, there's specialties that they're interested in. The training budget needs to be utilized, and I don't think it has been, optimized throughout the years. The young officers we have right now are moldable. You need a lot of training. And I'm not talking about basic patrol training, I'm talking some of the specialty type things. But they're also eager to learn, and if you keep them busy, I can get some of the community outreach programs going that I'd like to do. Right now in town, if you look at the demographics, 34% of your population is over 65 years of age. So you have a great need, other than just the assisted living facilities who have been all been reaching out to me all week long. I have appointments for speeches here, there, and everywhere else over the next couple of weeks to say time. But not everybody lives in a facility like that. They're living by themselves in their home because they refuse to leave. They're not talking to people for periods of time, weeks, months, even longer. My view has always been there needs to be a little dignity when you get older. Getting older now, and I'd like to think someone's gonna check on me when I get older. In the past, I've run a Good Morning Senior program which did just that. We checked in on seniors. They would register with the department and they would call in the morning during a certain time period. Just to let us know they're okay. 9 times out of 10, you get a 5-minute conversation with them. And the sad thing is that conversation is the only conversation they probably had in a week or 2 weeks. Because families moved on or passed away, whatever the case may be. So it's important to them, but it's important to us. They benefit from it, but it's important to us because we know where they are and that they're okay. There's nothing worse as a police officer than to walk into a home for a welfare check and someone that hasn't been heard from in 3 weeks and find out they passed away 3 weeks ago.
The city of Bath uses that with the people can register, they call in.
Yep.
If they fail to call in, then we go
check.
statewide.
Sheriff Brackett has a program like
I
that.
was gonna say, yeah, the sheriff's department has.
I think that's what it is.
Are you okay?
Are you okay?
Yeah, are you okay? That's what's name.
Yeah.
I think with the name.
It works very well, and you know, it adds that dignity to life that people need. And definitely the interaction that they don't normally get. If they don't call, we run through the checklist if they have any relatives or point of contact to say, hey, have you seen Mary? Do you know where Mary is? Sometimes they took off to Vegas to go, gamble, whatever the case may be, but while they're down the street at the market, they just forgot, and that's okay. But if we don't make contact that way, we'll go to the home, knock on the door, make contact. If necessary, we'll involve the fire department and other resources to make sure we get it and check and make sure everyone's good. I think that's perfect here with 34% of your population. It's definitely something that's needed.
What percentage of calls last year were welfare check calls? Do you have any sense of that?
I might have. Let's go ahead. If it's on here.
Sure.
Welfare check, self-initiated 2, dispatched 5. For a total of 7, but that's. Someone's on the side of the road not making sense, or someone's in the store acting weird kind of thing. That's not necessarily, please check on my mother, I haven't heard from her in a long time. So generationally, a lot of people don't like to get involved, and what I do is I twist it up a little bit so they don't know they're being involved. I have seniors take the phone calls at the PD in the morning from that time period from 9 to 10, whatever it is. So they're coming, if they're mobile, they come to the PD. We know they're okay because they're sitting next to us and they're answering the phone. And a lot of times they enjoy the conversations with people they haven't talked to in a long time. So, whatever you have to do to get tricky, to get people to be engaged, that's what we do. So I think a program like that would work very well in town here. The assisted living facilities have been fantastic, as I said. I've had a couple of speeches coming to a couple of different groups. They watch the news, they get panicky, want to know what's going on. So I go and have a conversation with them, try to calm them down, or at the very least introduce myself and let them know I'm not the boogeyman. You can call me and have that conversation. But I want my officers involved in this. It's about me. It's about my people being involved in this type of behavior and interacting with the community, which I think is greatly needed. They've done a great job. I think we can do better. We can always do better. That's why parking ambassador, the conversations there, the officers being involved with some of these programs, I think is a great way to go. Other than just seeing the black car drive by and, 9 times out of 10, people waving and they're not using all their fingers. So I'd like to have them interacting with them appropriately and understanding that we're people. Oddly enough, it happens.
But the Coffee with a Cop program was very effective.
It is good. It's a good way, but you only meet a small amount of people.
It's called community policing. You know what I mean? Getting the police out into the community to know the community. I mean, if we think that there's a need for, a 6-person police department, or the administrative assistant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, community policing, I think Coffee with a Cop and those types of things are good, but I think they're a piece of what community policing is. I'm old school. I learned how to be a cop by walking the street. I got out of the
Looking for a
academy.
pocket guy down the street. It might not be so quite as good as a chief.
When I had a business in town a long time, like 30 years ago, Officer Minzy, is that it?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
the chief, what was his name?
yeah.
Whatever,
George.
Hutchins.
Yeah.
Anyways, people, they would walk through the street every evening, and rattle the doorknobs.
Yep.
Would be there cooking late, you know, or early in the morning. And then come in and stuff, and there was a real presence of the cops walking the beat, and I haven't seen that in years, really don't.
And that's what I want to try to bring back, like, that's considered old school policing, that to me is community policing.
Yeah.
When I used to walk my beat, I knew my neighborhood, I knew when I heard banging behind the Greek restaurant at 8 o'clock at night, that was Mr. Costa emptying the trash barrel. If I heard banging at 10 o'clock at night, we had someone kicking in the back door. I would stop and talk to Mrs. Robinson, and she told me who's selling drugs, where stolen cars were, who's gonna stagger out of the bar, where they're gonna pass out, cause it's a regular thing. But I knew my neighborhood, I cleared cases like crazy. Then I got to the car, and my clearance rate dropped, cause I didn't know my neighborhood anymore, I didn't know the people that I worked for. That's what I wanna bring back, that's what I like about small towns, is that you can do that, you do have the time to do that. I want my people doing their building checks, not just driving by and putting a light on, but getting out of the car and shaking a few doorknobs. Walk up and down Main and see the businesses. Not to mention that it's embarrassing if you put a light on it and you check it off as you did it. And then there's a break in at 8 o'clock in the morning that's discovered, and you need to explain why you didn't see that, so. That personal touch, I think, is everything.
We have a parking spot in the middle of town.
Yep.
That is designated, which designated authorized people, and that was one of its purposes. The other was for when the folks from the office had to go into town, into the bank. They know they had a place to park the car, but otherwise that spot is a set aside for just that, for having a patrol car downtown. It's centralized, so it allows the officer to go up and down Main Street and not be that far away from his car.
I'd like to get them back to it. For all young
Yeah.
people, they don't understand what that's about. They think it's driving around in a car and wearing a uniform, and
Yeah.
you don't meet people that way at 35 miles an hour. Lastly, I just want to talk about the PD. I had a chance to go through it. Couple of liability issues I've seen that we've been talking about with different people, trying to keep the price down. Hopefully a zero balance on a lot of the things. Cipher locks on some of the doors. We have a side door that's inaccessible. No one has a key for it. We can leave through it, but we can't enter through. We're gonna put a cipher lock on it, which will cost us zero. One of the guys that works for me, has a whole box of them, and there are a couple of them in the PD, so it costs the town nothing. Cameras, you do need a couple of cameras put up in the PD. You have some dead spots where there's a security issue, not to mention there's no security system in the PD, so when the officer leaves 2 o'clock in the morning from 2 o'clock to 6, you have a PD that's unprotected, that has limited camera coverage and zero alarms. So the only one that's gonna see anything happening is the officer that comes in at 6 in the morning. Let's keep the place inside. You don't have an interview room for witnesses, victims, or suspects. We have a lunchroom that is way too big, overcrowded and really inappropriate for the size of the department. We're looking to turn that into a training room / interview room and set that up with a camera and record it as you're required to by law, where you're able to record your statements. I know, I'm still looking for prices, so let's not panic about that yet, but I'm gonna have people come give me prices on it just so we know what we're looking at. Well, these are liability issues, because the first time you, that you're not recording your statement, you're gonna pay a price for that. Or if you have the camera running, and you probably should have shut it off, which we can't do right now. Because you're bringing a victim of domestic violence or a juvenile sexual assault. That's a liability issue, so we need to correct those things, so we're on track. Other than that, overall, things are pretty good. You're on a 4-year cycle for your cruisers. I think that's decent. You're estimating 40,000 a year, you're putting on the cost, and I think that's pretty accurate. So you're able to, at the end of 4 years, have something that's still, still has a resale value. Bring the new car in, so I think you're doing good on that. As long as you stick to it, as soon as you push it to 5 years, because it's a little tight, or 6 years, even worse. That's when you have problems, because now you have, instead of the car that you gotta rotate out of the 4, now you have the other one you held on in 2 years too long. So we have even less value, and you're throwing a lot of money into it to keep it on the road. Luckily, we do pretty well with mechanic in town. He gives us great prices as opposed to bringing it to the Ford dealership, so every little bit helps when it comes to that. Other than that, it's just a matter of bringing the officers up to speed and making sure they're happy where they are. Happy officer wants to stay. Like I said, it doesn't matter what kind of money you throw at them, if they're unhappy, they're gonna leave. So I'm trying to turn that around, make them part of the department.
Chief, what's your longest tenured officer?
Right now it's my sergeant. He has 12 or 14 years.
That's Sylvester.
Yes, yeah. And he's a young officer. He has zero, supervisory training. He definitely would benefit from that. But he's full, but he's lacking. He's done a pretty good job putting it together. So, a little guidance, a little bit of training, I think he's doing a good job keeping an eye on the officers, and he connects to them. He's a lot closer to their age than I am, so he connects to them a little bit better.
I'm sorry, who was the sergeant?
Kyle Sylvester.
But as I said, we have little to no crime in this town. How are you gonna keep them active? Training doesn't cut it.
Well, if you're generating 7,000 calls for service a year minus the building checks, you're pretty active. In the winter, we're quiet. But being a busy town or a big busy department doesn't mean you have murders every day or you have fatal accidents or catastrophes every day. The domestics that you don't hear about that we respond to, the sexual assaults, if that's a place that's the issue. The car accidents that take place, the burglaries that take place, the thefts from some of the businesses. We just had one downtown the other day. Had two people taking cars stealing out of one of the businesses. That was an issue, but we have warrants for them. They do happen. 7,000. I'm telling you, that's a good size number. So although it's slow right now, obviously your numbers pick up once the snow melts.
Because all they focused on was the property checks and the town report. $1 million for that is a little much.
Was happy to provide a better data set to understand, again, last year, when I didn't think to put it in for this budget, but we certainly can get you the numbers and to understand. How, what the types of calls for service are logged for the last couple of years, but also that program can generate the time spent for those calls and the average time spent on those calls. And it's really eye-opening to understand, where we're spending the time. The property checks isn't where we're spending the most time. It's the biggest call generator because of the volume. But when you look at 20 seconds per property check, it's not where we're spending the most amount of time. Whereas a simple MVA might on average be 30, 35, 40 minutes, depending on, on average, depending on what's happening. And you realize just how many of those we generate in a year. So I think we can get the data to you so you can look at it from a different perspective and understand like how and what types of calls are, to do that for every location and understand what all the calls at each location will be a little extra, but we'll start with that, and if other questions come up, we can go from there.
That'd be helpful. Thank you for it.
Yeah, thank you.
And another example of, it's not just crimes that the police department responds to. When 7 or 8 years ago, when my mom was living with me, and I was taking care of her, and we needed an ambulance. The ambulance came, but also accompanied by a police officer, and it was very reassuring to have that person show up along with the ambulance. See if there was anything else we needed. So those are important uses of the police department, and you wouldn't want to wait for Lincoln County Sheriff's Office to come when you're, you've got an ambulance.
No, they wouldn't come.
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. So,
It's a lot easier when you know the officer that shows up, because you built them before they corrected the towns for quite a while.
exactly, yeah.
It's a little bit of extra comfort.
Any other questions on the police stuff for right now? We can get Chief Roberts in there.
Chief, 8 days in.
Yeah,
That is a vital
Getting his feet wet.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, anytime, feel free to call, you know where to find me. Stop in, I'm more than happy to have a conversation.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Donna, you coming to the hot seat?
No,
No, no.
the other junior selectmen, you gotta sit in the back.
Let him in.
You're the newbie, Darryl.
So we have animal control.
We got ACO, but is there anything on animal control?
There's a jump there,
Always is a little bit.
a lot of cycles.
We'll definitely.
Yeah. Folks, if we could get back on track here, we're looking at the ACO real quick before we get the chief in. Page, yeah, 84. Yeah.
41% increase.
Yeah.
You gotta stop using these acronyms. I can know what AC. I can't catch on. I'm old, I can't keep up with you.
This is the guy with the shovel you were talking about.
Yeah. Just give me the page number.
So, page 84, animal control, yeah. This is contracted.
Why did all these track go up and so?
Happy to do it once I've ever got attention, so we don't have to repeat it again.
Exactly. That's sweet.
Those terms. The jump there in the ACO contract, the animal control officer 3636. The comment there hopefully helps us understand that goes up a little bit every year just because their cost book every year for those whole wages and associated costs. The note that they weren't billing us for every hour spent. It wasn't being tracked in a way that it should have been. So they let us know that about a year ago. That we were likely to see an increase in that cost because of that accounting and administrative end. And so that's mostly attributed to that. Yeah, so it's not that it's a major change, that we're realizing and they're tracking it better and understanding that they were missing out on billables. And so this was the true and more accurate cost of time spent in our community.
So this is a county employee.
This is a.
County.
Sure, we contract with the sheriff, so the county is a civil employee of the sheriff's department, that ends up fulfilling this. I think last I knew there was one full-time and one part-time, to be able to meet, I don't know how many towns, trying to picture the meeting we were in, I think there was at least 7 towns that contract for that particular service.
It's just dogs, right?
No, all domesticated animals.
Why isn't
Well, you
that,
can see the picture.
why isn't the animal control part of the sheriff's department?
Yeah. See, the big problem is wild animals, and they don't deal with that.
To some degree they do, but it's mostly domesticated. I mean, if there's a rabid animal in a neighborhood, that's something that they're gonna coordinate and be part of. So it's a pretty broad range of issues they address related to the animal stuff. It's all spelled out in statute where it needs to be done.
Andy, why isn't the animal control part of the sheriff's department? Or is it part of the sheriff's department?
That's a
If it is,
contract.
why are we paying for it? Because we don't pay for a patrol officer to back up against our police department.
Yeah, it's all foreign in statute, and so it's not a service in which the county was offering prior to whatever the statutory date was. And so it's an extra service, and so the way it's set up is we're paying shellfish wardens similar. You know, we're choosing to work with the county to be able to administer and oversee the shellfish contract. That's a contractual obligation that the law states they have to build the towns that are causing that cost.
Does every town pay is it equal payment, or are we based on a percentage of calls or?
Strictly the number of hours they respond in our community.
So this is really a planning number, it's not really discretionary, it is what it's gonna be, I mean, whatever they end up.
Because we're still in the first 12 months of them actually billing what they've actually spent as opposed to some of the gaps. We don't even have a full good 12-month history of that new realized administrative effort. And so, I'm trying to guess, I'm trying to make sure that there's a budget afforded to do it. The reality is if we end up spending $8,000 on that, we can probably find a way to absorb it within public safety, but John's probably gonna get mad at me, because someone telling me he's gotta cut back a few $100. Or we go to town meeting, or we can use the contingency. So there's a couple of fail-safes opportunities there if it's small, but if it gets to be too big, like any expenditure, we'd have to come back to the voters or choose not to have them do that particular work, but we're still obligated. I think this is one place where the statute says if the select board fails to appoint someone to this duty, they assume that responsibility.
Oh,
That's a good motivator.
Dog catcher, that's a good title by there. I was the medical officer for almost a year. Medical officer?
I'm much better suited for.
I gave him a shovel to clean up the skunk, so.
Do you have any
Yeah.
idea how many animals they pick up?
We can,
I'm just curious.
so like,
Seems like
$5,000 worth last year.
I can see if they have a more, data-driven, kind of like summary view, what they give us every month with the bill, it basically is the printout of the call record.
Yeah.
Which might be interesting for some folks to read what the calls were, but it's not a nice summarized view, so you spend a lot of time flipping through pages. I'll see if they can get us a more tabulated summary view of, by the month or however they do it. Just to have a better sense of just the number of calls. I know it was a little eye-opening for us to realize that, the average, I think there's a minimum time in which they bill us if they come. They're billing us for the mileage that employee, incurs to get to us from wherever they're coming from. But we can bring a little more clarity to that and share what that looks like.
On the revenue line, again, we've only collected $28. How often do people have to get their dog license renewed?
Every year.
Every year, and is it like they all come in March, or is that a timing variance?
For 2026, they can start registering at the middle of October. And they have until the end of January for the 26 year without penalty. If you come in November of 26, you're gonna pay the late fees $25 plus if they're spayed and neutered, I think $6, if they're not 11.
So shouldn't we have collected a fair amount then? If it was October to.
So
January?
$28 represents.
Yeah.
That's year to date through December, so it's through the second AP period of December. People just start registering their dogs in
Yeah.
December, so that's why
Okay,
there's not a
all
lot.
right, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like me, you wait till the following month.
We only
to
get $3.
Year out of it.
That's right.
You only get $3. Yeah, like for the $6 dog, it's free, the steak is free.
Anything else on ACO, so we can move along, close the part, we still have fire department to, John wants stuff.
Got another meeting to go to.
You got another meeting probably, the 9th. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
PowerPoint ready?
I don't have PowerPoint.
Go ahead.
No. I don't think there's a lot of changes other than, under payroll. We're requesting to go to $20 an hour and again, it's
They're gonna want a page number for that.
88.
188, they're right.
88, maybe on.
All right. We're looking at payroll on page 88,
9 mostly.
89, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Number.
You just mentioned generally the payroll, was one of the bigger drivers of the $5,000 roughly increase.
So it's an increase. What is it at now for hourly?
19.
That's fine, no.
So that's for calls and training, and then, we have a request for an increase in my stipend.
Well deserved.
On the chief line 90,
Yeah,
85.
That's the only real, substantial change, other than adding, we have 3 captains, 3 lieutenants, the budget only had, 4 of those positions, so 6 of them last year. So even though we had the position filled, we just didn't have the budget to cover that, so I think that's the other.
What position is that? I'm sorry, I'm not hearing.
9085.
Yeah,
90, they're all 9085.
What
It's
position are we talking?
SCBA captains and officers, it's gonna be the 6th line down on page 89.
Okay, I got you now. I see.
So we've had 3 captains and 3 lieutenants, this year, but, there was a typo, I think, in the formula last year that didn't have that budgeted for.
Yeah, so you're just showing the increase of what, 600 there,
600 for
600 and 4,200 for one position. Okay.
We, in the current fiscal year, we had requested $5,000 for assisting with some station changes, so that has come out. That was a one-time thing, so that would have been on page 90. 90 under 3330.
That was 8250 in our current fiscal year, and the request for going down and back down to 3250, which is below.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay.
John, can I ask a question here on your firefighter training pay? It's just about double. What are you doing now that's cost so much more than we did 2 years ago?
You're back on 89,
I'm
Larry.
back on 89, I'm sorry.
What's the number?
98.5 firefighter training pay.
Yeah.
In 2023, you were about 10.5 and you're 19,000. I was just curious,
Well,
what's driving that cost?
some of that is actual versus budget, right? So,
Yeah, we don't see the budget.
we bring up the budget for 23.
Yeah, we increased the budget last year to accommodate OSHA changes, my understanding was.
So the budget in 23 was 12,320. Of that, we expended 10,496. We had been budgeting for 770 hours at $16 an hour. So we're requesting 950 hours instead of, again, that's similar to what we did last year. So if I jump back to FY23, we were looking at 770. We have 4 junior members right now that are going through a basic class. Now that's going to end up affecting our budget for our current fiscal year budget, because that class will end in June. But we have some younger members that we're wanting to bring up. What has happened a lot with departments is, you know, we were doing really good, and then COVID hit. We didn't really do anything. The numbers have kind of dropped down. The amount of people that have show up for trainings has dropped some. So that's something that we need to bring back around and address better. So
Are these trainings, do they go somewhere for training, or is this something you do on site?
So most of the training we do, we meet every Tuesday night.
Just on site?
Yeah, on site. We might go visit the mutual aid town to do training with them. But almost all of this is training on site or within the county. So again, something that growing up in the fire service, we did a lot was they'd be in the fire tech schools. So these hours would pay for that, you know, for 16 hours for a weekend. That's another thing that kind of has gone away with COVID. They're not advertised as well. They always used to be 2 a year down in York County. They used to be 2 a year up in Waterville. Those things don't really exist as well. The changes of the system, there used to be a 7-mod system to be able to be interior certified, where you could do 1 mod a weekend. So over the course of 2 years, going to 4 different, you know, classes a year, you can get there. Now they don't have it broken down where you can do it that way. You really need to get into a firefighter 1 or 2 or a basic fire academy. So
we basically reimburse our volunteer fire department for the hours they
you
pay training.
you pay them for training.
Paid. It's really not voluntary.
Well, I mean, we're a completely voluntary based system, right? So we have no one that's ever sitting there on call.
No, I understand.
So when the pager goes off, whoever is
Yeah, it just gets paid.
period of time,
Yeah.
they get paid $19 an hour. Right
Whatever
now,
it is,
we're
yeah.
requesting to
I get
get
it.
money. Now, most of the department, you know, works for themselves in some regard. So when they leave work, either they're leaving people unsupervised, like in my case, or they're losing out on the lawns that they're able to get done, or the construction that they're doing. So
I get it.
the $20 an hour that we're requesting doesn't even come close to what people are losing minimal. As far as their earning income with working for themselves. So we're not doing it for the money, but you know, it helps.
No, you're not doing it to lose money either.
Well, we still are, but
Yeah, but it's not the purpose.
I tell you what, when I get a fire alarm at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'd rather give you $20 than drag my butt out of bed.
The pay per meeting, how long is that 25 cents spent on the?
Bylaws, so something we enjoy.
You increase that?
You know,
What is it, like 1890?
Well, so in the bylaws, it used to say that if you wore your cap, you would forfeit your
expense. So if you didn't take your hat off in the meeting, you would forfeit your 25 cents.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any other, was there any other big changes that we had? I didn't think.
Bonnie's got a question.
I have a question. How is our department in terms of numbers of volunteers relative to other towns? I mean, a lot of towns are hurting. Are we hurting? Are we doing okay? I'm sure there's never enough, but
I think right now, we're doing better than most in the area, but, I'll share a little story. I was doing a little bit of research in the archives of, items and came across the fire that was, right down next to the service station. Which is, yeah, 91, early 90s.
serendipity.
Serendipity, yeah. And so at that point, Waldeboro, I mean, Wiscasset brought the ladder truck over and that probably saved 2 or 3 of the structures. The article said that Damariscotta had over 20 firefighters there. Newcastle provided over 20 firefighters. I think there was a total from the 5 towns of 70 something firefighters, right? If we had a call during the day right now, and I called every department out in the county, we might end up with 60 or 65 firefighters for a daytime call. Nighttime's a little better, daytime is a struggle.
Folks working out of town, yeah.
And we're much more fortunate than most with that. At Jefferson, for example, there's not a lot of businesses there, so almost everyone that's working is working somewhere else. So, I don't know if the bedroom community is the right term for what some of the areas are, but, certainly the northern part of the county, there's not a lot of businesses. So a lot of people are sleeping there and then working somewhere else.
Yeah.
So daytime calls, continue even for us to be very difficult. Because again, someone's got to leave work, and for the guys on our department that work for themselves, they might be in Damariscotta that day, or they might be down in Funfoot, or they might be who knows where. So it's hit or miss, which goes back to the voluntary base. We don't have a schedule that says, okay, these 6 people are committed to be able to respond for whatever incidents. So we end up relying on mutual aid and especially in the summer and during the day, mutual aid, pick up those routine calls is more common than it ever has been.
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm starting to get religion on the fire department, because I think I asked a lot of questions the first couple of years, and if you had to pay like full-time police and fire persons to do this, I can tell you, instead of a couple $100,000, you'd be talking $1 million or more. I mean, we talked about this in the past and what that would look like. You'd be talking multiples of what we pay today. I mean, this is a bargain in terms of fire coverage.
If you look at CLC's budget or any of the ambulance services, they usually have 4 people on 24 hours a day. That would be about a minimum staffing level for the department. And you're looking at $1.5 to $2 million to do that. That's not what we're advocating. I'm just providing that as we would make the police department budget look small, if we went to that route. So we're doing everything we can to try to, train people up and be able to keep operating as a volunteer-based service as long as we can. We're looking at closer relationships with other towns to try to see how to keep that going, so.
That fire that you referenced was my office.
Yeah.
Oh, was it? And it was on a Sunday morning, and I will say that the turnout was impressive. And one of the things that struck me is that the adjacent building, which was literally about that far away, there was no damage whatsoever. My building was lost, and there was no damage whatsoever to the building that was that far away. That's what we're paying for, so.
I think most of us being the community, have no idea who the volunteers are, and I think given that, we tend to not recognize adequately the people who volunteer. I mean, this is dangerous work. And as you said, many of them, they drop what they're doing at their job and go save us.
They don't like being recognized about do that. They hide in the shadows.
I know.
We're we put pictures in some years, we'll put a picture of, you know, and state all the firefighters for the town of village stuff. Try to vary it every year to do something a little different, to, you know, provide a little bit of history or for different tidbit, but I already submitted for this last year, but next year I'll try to see if we can get a good picture together and.
What's, we have a website, right? Is it on the website?
I think the website is very outdated.
It's outdated. I wasn't,
It's on my list, it hasn't made it to the top.
yeah,
of the list
there's
yet.
some stuff, some history and stuff on there.
Some of us don't do websites.
Yeah.
I mean, this has nothing.
Oh, I got it.
Rallies.
Let me go here, go, what do you do with Barry?
I applaud. So,
I'm just gonna make a comment, you know, and this has nothing to do with John, but if we lowered our taxes, we could get the population back up and the younger people could afford to live here and the fire department could grow.
If we could lower our, yeah.
But the fire department has.
How's that working?
It's not working so far.
But
And
66% of our people are less than 65. 66% of our people are less than 65.
I work 2 jobs to pay my taxes. That's why I left last night early.
Do we have any, we'll stay on the fire department here, anything else that's comes up for any line items that anybody wants to
Well, I think that's right, we should.
Just that rounding issue that drives me nuts every year.
the rent?
Which one?
Yes, your request and budget is $2 more than his, and it's just, and it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It does, last year he ended up approving 2 different versions, so we had to have this whole thing about $2.
It would be more than that, but he put my request for the,
Can we
like,
just give you the
Medicare
$2?
to be rounded as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll have to be like 280.
Yeah, put the $2 towards
for
the dinner.
the fireman's, just.
This is your, mine's $25.
Yeah,
Cheryl can't put any 2 cents in a trio, so I wouldn't do $1.
yeah, so I don't even know where the rounding issue is. Like,
It's paid per meeting. I have 33, he has 35.
In the Piker one, we probably.
I think like one you made mine match.
I said those ones.
In this case, you split the difference, feel good about saving the buck, maybe.
I'm willing to give him, he only increased by 2.7%, I'm willing to give him both dollars.
Yeah.
I really only have that line in there as a historic,
That was all right,
you know, it's still our bylaws, so the big 25 cents is.
It's just, I'd love to know when that was, what year that was put in place for it. It's important.
Initially in 1876, you had to pay to become a firefighter. You had to pay to, because the company was set up to, people putting in money to buy equipment and stuff, so, to become a, you know, charter member, you had to buy in,
Yeah.
And then there were fines if you ran past the engine and didn't help pull it. That you were fined for not pulling your share of the weight.
John, on your budget here, and I must admit, I haven't looked at the fire department as closely as I probably should have. Is there a line in here for your new fire truck you could come in?
That's
That's in the capital.
Yeah, that's what we talked about a couple weeks ago, was. You know, our capital expenditure is larger than the operating budget.
Yeah, sure is. It surely is.
Yeah. I'd like to do something different, but really we have, since 2013, we had 6 fire trucks. And they say fire trucks, full fire trucks, that we had in the station. And our current plans to go down to 3, so. That's a pretty huge savings dollar wise. I don't think I had that in the plan, but, you know, just dropping the 1 truck is about a $900,000 savings in the current year dollars. So, well, that number keeps going up. We have been trying to do things to limit that impact.
This probably has nothing to do with this budget, but I'll throw it out there. When the ladder truck that you're gonna replace, the one that you're gonna have 2 sell or whatever you're gonna do, why couldn't you have just rebuilt that truck? On bumper to bumper, and spent $500,000, get motor transmission pumps, whatever.
Well, it's the departments that have done that on aerials, they started it saying, you know, it's gonna be $750,000, and then they'll do it for more than $1 million, and then you have an aerial that's still 30 years old that, you know, I know you don't like heights, but when you're up 100 feet in the air, you kind of want to make sure that the metal underneath you can hold it. So,
Well, that's why you rebuilt it.
well, you don't rebuild the ladder.
You can't.
Yeah, we rebuilt the fly section of our ladder.
I'm not here to argue, I'm just asking a question.
I think it
How
was
could you, why
$50,000
didn't you?
is what it cost to rebuild the base section of our 1976 Maxim.
How much you said?
50,000, and that was, that would have been early 2000s. So,
Well, and then
The
it's not
COVID
available while you're rebuilding it, so then we don't have one, so.
yeah, I know someone told me that recently that they were going through a remount process. And it was taking over a year. And their costs were, I think, originally gonna be 3/4, and now they're around $1 million.
And still got a 30-year-old chassis.
That's say, depends on how far you go with that, right? So, and NFPA standards say that, anything over 25 years should just be completely removed or go through a full rebuild, but. When you start talking about all the different changes, every time they update the NFPA standards, they come up with new safety features, which is why they recommend. Retiring trucks at that age. So it's not just replacing the chassis or the cabinets, you have to go through and change the entire computer system, so what you end up having is. You know, some frame rails that may or may not be good, the frame rails on 30-year-old trucks are all this mild steel, so they're probably one of the worst parts. So with the fire trucks, almost everything's built through the stainless steel or aluminum, all the trucks we have are the body, the body, when I say bodies, it's the cabinets and everything, they're all aluminum. Aluminum doesn't fail as much as the other things. On engine one, the last big repair we did, we had to replace the cradle for the tank because that was mild steel and it rotted out, so. After about 17 years, we had to spend, it was with Matt, $30-something thousand they had to take the whole tank out and replace them, so. Nowadays, almost all the trucks are coming with galvanized, steel, completely galvanized parts or aluminum. So we should have a better life on those, but it's the computer parts that, you know, when it gets 10 years old and something dies, you might not be able to replace it.
Or like you said, they
You
change
haven't given us
standards.
enough thought, I don't think.
Yeah.
So,
We looked at doing that before and even looking at used stuff. Whenever you get something used, you don't know how it was treated, how it was maintained. And usually the cheapest time to own a vehicle is in the first 5 years. Then the next 5 years, a little bit less, the next 5 years, a little bit less. You know, Edgecombe just bought a truck for $60,000. Saw this in a release. And I think it was a 21 or 22-year-old pumper. So you're still spending a pretty significant amount of money for something that's over 20 years old. It used to be in one of the trucks we got from New York, the guys went down with a couple coolers of lobster, they gave them to the fire department, they drove a truck away. That doesn't happen anymore. So if it did, we'd be bringing down lobsters.
Gone by 25 cents.
so John, if we're going from 6 vehicles to 3 vehicles, I'm assuming that we can do that because we have support of the other towns.
Well, we've already gone to 4. And this latest round, proposal last year with the ladder truck was, to retire the tanker when it's no longer serviceable. So,
But we still have 1 tanker.
no, we won't have any
We won't have
tankers,
any.
we'll rely on mutual aid, just like they rely on us for a ladder truck.
Okay.
So. That's part of the plan is to update the mutual aid agreement so that, we can put a little bit of teeth in it, because right now it pretty much just says that towns will provide, you know, whatever resources they have at the time to help you and us the same way. So it's more to say, you know, you need to commit to maintaining a tanker in, you know, operational condition and we'll do the same for a ladder truck.
And then committing to come to that fight also.
That's probably tougher because again, no one has, you know, I can't actually commit anything other than what I'm gonna do myself because I don't have anyone on staff that's sitting there waiting to go. It depends on the day and it depends on how many people are available.
So a joint task force is really an important thing.
You know, we work very cooperatively with all our mutual aid departments. I think I put in the quarterly report, how many calls we're doing and how many are mutual aid and how many come to us. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty substantial number of how often we're going mutual aid. Usually we provide aid more than we receive, but a couple of years ago, we had several brush fires and Freeman guys were living in our town for like 2 weeks, so, you know, it just takes one series of events where you're getting a few years back of aid that you provided.
John, I was at the Bristol town meeting last week and Chief Sutter was asked about some kind of a regional full-time fire commissioner chief with all the fire departments in this area to kind of oversee. Is that something like that in the works? He was kind of vague on it and I was like, what's that all about?
The fire departments in Damariscotta, Newcastle, Bremen, South Bristol, Bristol, and Millborough. The six of us are exploring a fire district, sorry. So what that means is we're looking at what it takes to standardize our policies and procedures to set ourselves up better to be able to work more closely with each other. So right now, we all carry pagers on us. So if there's an emergency in town, the pager will alert us, tell us where we're going, and then we respond. If it's something that either because we don't have enough manpower to deal with it or it's a larger event, then we'll initiate mutual aid. So what that means is we'll ask for Newcastle to be started and then they'll come with whatever they have. So that process is a bit more time consuming because you have to find out what you need and then start asking for other towns. So some of the towns and us are included. If we're going to a structure fire, Bristol and Newcastle automatically just get dispatched at the same time as Damariscotta does. Some of the other towns go a little bit further than that, and there might be 6 departments that are paged out at the same time. So one of the things we're looking at is, especially daytime calls, if we have a fire district and we work through what MMA needs and everything, and we dispatch in a certain way, how would it be seamless to just allow the Damariscotta guys that are available to go to the Bristol call, or the Bristol guys that are available to come to the Damariscotta call? So that's that piece I kind of alluded to on trying to make sure that we have enough people to respond to emergencies. Is looking at having a larger group.
Would this be like a full-time position for one person or 2 people or a small group of people?
It would be.
How are you gonna manage it?
Right now, it's no different than how we respond today. It would just be allowing, you know, we, instead of dropping tones for Damariscotta, Newcastle, Millborough, it might be we just drop tones for the CLC fire district. And then whoever is available comes. So we are in the very early stages of trying to sort out all that stuff. The first step is to, again, make sure that we all have the same policies and procedures because we can't have, you know, right now we kind of respond as a unit. So the Damariscotta guys respond together in our truck and then, you know, we get assigned a task and we do it. So we want to make sure that we're all using the same protocols and our training in the exact same way. Because we can't have a guy responding to a call on Damariscotta going under, you know, okay, I do this, this, and this first, and then in Bristol, it's 3 different steps. We need it all to be the same before we can get to that level of integration. Now, further down the line, does that mean, you know, we look at, okay, does it make sense to have someone that can take care of paperwork, do the truck checks and all that stuff, in one station. So we have one full-time person spread among two towns, or does every town, purchase half of one? It's setting us up so that we can be more flexible with what the needs become later on. So if we're no longer able to have a full crew together to go to a car accident in the middle of the day because everyone's out of town, then we have to start looking at, how do you still provide that protection for people? So again, it all starts with having everyone work the same way, train the same way. So in some regards, it's just codifying what we're already doing, but again, we need to start with the policies and procedures and make sure that they're all the same.
So realistically, are you expecting this process will take at least a year? So we wouldn't be addressing it at all in this budget. We would be looking maybe to a future budget.
Again,
If there were to
again,
be
right
any
now,
costs.
even if we were, I think the fire district's already created. Our responses haven't changed. I would see that it might be a little uptick in training and a little uptick in call responses. But other than that, right now, we don't foresee any big change. Like, the big change would be, again, do we have a couple people around during the day that can go down miles for the fire alarms that we have quite often, so that everyone else doesn't have to leave work? Let me figure that out. Or
Thanks.
whatnot.
On the planning board, you come before the planning board all the time to offer opinions on various applications or whether something meets the code or whatever. Is there any way that you're getting reimbursed by the applicant or the town?
Well,
That work?
on that, the top line item for the stipend, that's what I get for all the stuff that's not calls and training. So if it's not calls and training, the stipends what I use everything else the position.
Well, I mean, I think that certainly for bigger projects that require review of our fire chief, we should be including some sort of a fee that goes back to the fire department or goes back into his stipend or something.
Yeah, that's,
Oh, but you're planning board activity.
No, that's not, I said select.
fee, right, you're talking about fee schedules, and that's where you're looking
But
into
what
the
I'm saying
actual,
is, I think he does a huge amount of work
yeah,
for us.
yeah,
And some projects don't require much,
yeah.
just a casual look, but some bigger projects probably require some time.
And that's an exercise in actually, finding out what the actual costs are for all those things and making sure the fee schedule reflects that, yeah.
Yeah, but
So-
like a separate breakout for, review by the fire chief.
I've been depressed every time I try to write down the number of hours I spend, so I stopped doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, but don't you
So,
agree?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this does not reflect at all, this,
Andy parts, you remember, is like already bringing to.
well, I know. I mean,
Anything directly, anything directly on any of these lines that nobody sees for the fire department? So, and the chief's got many hats he wears. So,
You guys been training tonight, right?
We canceled tonight.
Gotcha.
Oh.
Yeah, he also has a pen. Okay, I'm not hearing anything else, so do we wanna move on to, you good, you wanna get out of here? Yeah, no. The seat opened up, so, all right,
Thank you, John, for all you do.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
John, thank you.
Yeah, he runs a paper company. And runs the paper.
So what do we have, a couple of things left here, we have an EMA, or emergency management. Thank you, Darryl. Page 93, there you go, you'll learn it. We're almost there, folks, yeah. Sorry, Larry, that's all right. I understand.
Emergency management, a relatively small increase in that, about 200 and $50. Some of that is attributed to the flood wall deployment training that we're gonna have to do. I'm recommending a couple times a year. so that we stay fresh and understanding how to do that. It's a small amount that would support, we need volunteers that come in and, when we did this, we had the company come in and show us, we were down there for 4 or 5 hours, I think it was in total. 4 hours.
Late, but it was a morning, yeah, 4 hours.
And that was only to pull out 200 feet. We don't need to do the whole 850, but we just acknowledging the time in that, whether they're staff or just straight up volunteers, or hopefully a combination of both. Yeah, that just making it small, it's a $150 increase to be able to support those two deployments.
What is that though? Is that like a payment to the people, or is that for pizza or what?
Presuming that we would provide drinks and lunch. And you're asking 4 or 5 hours and trying to go through that, so it's a small thing to get people to show up sometimes.
Yeah, okay.
Small increases for the stipends for the 2 positions, John Roberts wears the deputy hat, and Steve O'Brien wears the director's hat. Those invaluable positions, when something happens, you're relying on them, the big disasters, so they work well with the county. The county has a crackerjack team for the EMA services, and they do great and getting the word out. But anything that's localized that we have to respond to, you want them to be able to stand up and follow the ICS protocols. Anything done on that, so I did. Oh. Hydrants.
Surprises this year, right, from the.
Not to the tune that we saw last year. But budgeting for a much more modest increase compared to what we saw for the 2026 budget. They have rate changes. If you're in the district, you might recall the rate changes. There were 2 that were approved last year, one for January 125, the other one for January 126. So that full increase was realized for 2 years worth essentially in the current fiscal year, which was that jump from 164 to 227. The increase to the 246 is to account for some of that lingering cost where it splits our fiscal year. In a small 5% estimated increase for 27. My understanding was that they're gonna try and make those a little more planned and manageable rather than see I think we were like a 40, 30 or whatever percent jump it was.
Andy, is there some rule or requirement that we gotta have fire hydrants every so many feet when they put a new water line in? When they did the one out back meadow, they put a new hydrant in about every 500 feet. And I was just wondering why they put so many fire hydrants.
Yeah.
I lived down that road for 30 years now. We never had fire hydrants.
Smoking inside.
Yeah. What's the deal on that end?
My understanding is that's determined by the sanitary district, and they're following the good practice and protocols that exist to place hydrants. Part of that's understanding that if you're trying to go from one to the next, how much hose do you carry? I mean, talking to Scott, this is kind of how he understands it, but somewhere between 500 feet and 1,000 feet is kind of the benchmark. So somewhere about 750, so 1,000 feet apart.
So as a town, are we renting these hydrants from the water district?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, they pay to put them in, they pay to make sure there's water behind them, they pay to, in theory, clean out the snow in front of them, to make sure there's access to them. And these rates are, the way that the PUC regulates the rates for hydrants, the district has a budget to operate. The way it's set up is the PUC says they need to generate a certain percentage of revenue of that expense from hydrant fees. And so they take whatever, I think that they're applying at 30%. Of the revenue they generate has to come from hydrants, is how they've interpreted that. So that kind of sets it, and then between the 2 towns, they basically portion it depending on how many each town has. I think we've got about 75% of them between the 2 towns.
Yeah.
But and then to be clear, we're not paying per hydrant. We're paying basically a fee to have the hydrants. Alright, so if we added a hydrant, we don't then suddenly pay another.
Well, that's what I was asking. Do we pay by the hydrant or do we pay?
No, we pay, the PUC says that they can assess a percentage of their operating budget for there to be hydrants.
A percentage of the revenue they generate must come from the hydrant fees.
Yeah, but if we add a hydrant, we don't then pay another $250. If we eliminated a hydrant, this number would not go down.
Is that the way it works?
It's $4,000
yeah.
in hydrant.
Okay, how did it work? So again, if their costs are $1 million, that's what their cost is. They need to raise the revenue of $1 million to pay for their, well, their facility, their operation. The way the PUC regulates it, 30% of the revenues generated, so $300,000 must come from hydrants. Between the two towns in which three towns in which the district operates, two of which have hydrants in them. The cost is divided between those two towns based on the ratio of hydrants in each town. So partially, you could break it down per hydrant fee. What's it cost us per hydrant based on
Well, that's what
the rate?
4,000.
But if they, to Dick's point, if they do add a hydrant this year, like next month, they add a hydrant. My understanding is it's only when there's rate adjustments, do they then kind of reconsider that, or otherwise the rates change based on the operating costs?
And then our percentage would go up because we have more hydrants than the
Yeah,
other
if you
towns.
had a 1-1 for the towns, the ratio wouldn't change, but yeah.
Yeah, we have 10 added when that adjustment happened. They had in Newcastle, no new additions. You know, that's gonna adjust between the two towns, who's paying how much to the district. That's gonna shift that balance. I mean, you can break it down any way you want. You could do it per hydrant fee, but it's not simply per hydrant. That's not how they figure
And
it.
hydrant based on how many people
Curious.
are living in that street.
Is the new money.
Just.
Besides,
I should.
put a hydrant.
It's not great with the hydrant.
I'll know the question and I don't have the answer. I'll find the answer and let you know. It's driven by the district, period. It's their responsibility to provide water. If they're running Back Meadow Road, they ran water lines, new main lines down the road versus through the woods. And so in doing that, the practice is to install hydrants every so many feet along the main. And so they follow that practice. I can ask more specifically, what exactly are you following? We can share that with you so you can see what that guidance
The
is.
town, we have no control over that, right? It's whatever they decide they wanna put in for a hydrant.
But also the.
Yeah, it was based on, hose length and where people live, so we got two.
But do we have them everywhere?
Yeah, we could only go so far.
I don't know what
The unfortunate reality, important to remember is it's set by the PUC, like what we found last year with the rate increase, they had no control over it, and it came, or it was split, and it came in kind of suddenly, but they didn't do those rate increases incrementally either. It was, hey, let's catch up, and here it is all at once. So all we can do is hope that this maintains for a little while this way.
Really. They hadn't really funded needed improvements and stuff for the water district. It was actually a fascinating meeting. Because we all went there ready to make big complaints, about the proposed increases, and then they laid it all out and we went, wow,
Yeah.
we should raise it more.
So they.
Well,
they-
yeah,
they-
it is.
it's an investment.
Jenny, this is being recorded, but yeah.
Just say.
Well, yeah, you'd be like, raise it incrementally over time. They wait 10 years and go,
That's what
boom, yeah.
Andy,
Yeah.
this is one of the categories though that we pay it. It doesn't really, I mean, we can talk about it all we want,
Yeah.
we're gonna pay it.
But it was responsible for.
Could you do the list of which ones, so when we're in our separate budget meetings, we don't spend time on something that really we don't have any impact on?
I will attempt my best effort to let you know which things are contractually obligated and which ones
That would be
not. I
great.
continue to struggle with where I cut that line off. And whether it's a policy driven cost or whether it's a contractually driven cost.
Well, certainly contractual ones would be helpful, so we don't.
TLC, moving on next one.
This is a contractually driven cost. It's 6 times a year. The formula comes up for,
good.
the formula comes up for
Going
discussion,
down.
pretty regularly. Tom's noting it's going down this year. I do have my own concerns about that, but it's a separate board that runs that. This is a heck of a bargain for what we're provided for that level of service. I will say that the current formula cost share between the 6 towns, member towns, does come up for reconsideration this calendar year. To be effective in 27, and that'll be our fiscal year 28 when it gets through to us, so be mindful and maybe track that process. Tom can attest to it, it's not an easy conversation with the 6 towns, and currently it's a portion based on the state valuation. You have 2 towns of the 6 that have $1 billion plus, one pushing $2 billion of assessed value. And we're lagging behind at $750 million, so I think Newcastle slightly below that, Bremen below that, if I remember right. And so how it's to proportion has nothing to do with the call volume in each community, the population in each community is just, so some towns have issues with that formula, rightfully. And so we'll see what that conversation deals. Tom's our primary rep and I believe Josh Bacon's our secondary.
Nobody knows that, but he's.
Well, Dick has filled in a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do they ever consider, cause I used to do a lot of formulas in my previous job. Do you ever consider like a shared equally cost? Say, so every town pays 20%. And then the rest of it,
Yeah, well.
you divvy it up among
But then you'd have,
whatever it
you'd have
is.
some
the
towns,
call,
the smaller towns like
population.
Borough and.
Bremen
has 800 people.
Yeah, they do this.
Well, I don't know, I mean, I'm just.
That's not, I mean, you wanted, you'd like to volunteer to get into.
Tom, I was just gonna speak to that. I think what I heard. I got volunteers.
Well,
So to your question though, this
Yeah.
process never stopped. Like they'll start the 5 year and then immediately it's one town's, nobody's ever happy, so it
Right.
just revolves and revolves.
Yeah, the last meeting I attended, they're already talking about changing the formula.
Yeah,
They say that the last change they made, from which we benefited tremendously,
yes,
isn't working for them. So
for other towns, right?
Because they realize that Damariscotta has more calls, yes, but because we're the service center, you may go to Hannaford to pick up somebody that had a seizure, but they live in Bristol.
Yeah.
So that's not fair to the Damariscotta residents.
Right.
Right.
Well,
That's
so-
our argument, and we're sticking to it. So.
I've been there for 38 years, so.
Yeah.
so right now it's population based?
No.
No.
Call.
Before that, it was 1/3 population, 1/3 valuation, 1/3 call for service.
Yeah.
A couple of towns in particular feel like because of the traffic count where it's coming through, they are having a higher burden of based on the call volume, but the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 was an attempt to
Right.
kind of equal that out, but I mean, I remember I just came across the 2022, I mean, they presented it on 6 different formulas or something like that to look at it. Equal share, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, the valuation and a couple others. But those meetings are open to the public and the 501c3, I'm pretty sure it's still open to the public to go. But those will be happening sometime this year.
But just
Yeah.
remember, Damariscotta owns 1/6 of that service. Damariscotta, Newcastle, Bristol, South Bristol, Bremen, Noblesboro, we all own it.
There's 2 other towns, or at least portions of 2 other towns, I think that are.
Jefferson and Richmond are, contract.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, there's kind of some additional beyond that. core
That
6.
tremendous savings that we saw. A great deal of it fell on South Bristol.
Yeah.
Because their property valuation is so high. I don't know why they weren't fistfights. They were screaming and they've continued to do so. That they're trying to find a way to not accept that.
Cause we go there maybe 30 times in a year and they pay a lot. And that's
Yeah,
the issue.
it's a
Yeah,
hard.
if you're ever on School Street and count the cars coming from the south, you'll see that
Yeah.
all those people come up here and do things, and that's,
So for this year proposed, going forward, this year, it's a decrease of almost 10 grand, but, just as a heads up, FY 28. Buckle up, may not be, what I got.
I was gonna say, we can
I
assume
will,
it's gonna go up because of the revaluation.
No,
No.
I assume it's gonna go up because the cost formula is up for
Yeah.
consideration.
should cost one mil.
It was a 5-year block and there was a unanimous vote to read.
What it's gonna be, I have no idea.
I don't know, we better back it
I will add that there had been a consideration for determining when they bring an ambulance to somebody where that person lives. The problem is a lot of times they don't get an address for somebody that's there and or sometimes there are calls with no.
Or
They don't wind up picking anybody up.
How do you bill somebody who lives out of state?
Yeah.
So it's complications of all that.
Well, they're getting billed, right? I mean, they have insurance, but they don't have insurance. They're getting billed, but in terms of sharing the cost among the 6 member towns, how do you do that when? I don't know whatever the percentage is of non-resident treatment, but I mean, there's some, working, traveling through or staying for the weekend. I mean, it's a part of it's HIPAA compliance. You just can't do it that way, but. The other part is still just what you do. I mean, we're a seasonal community with a lot of traffic coming from, whether it's working or visiting in the summer working every day here, so it's an impossible task to try and. How do you, what's the equitable way to take that?
What is the budget for the CLC? Do you know, Lee?
Don't you know?
Well, it's roughly, I would say, you could just five times our cut, or six times.
Oh, it's good.
No, it's a million, it's a million.
Million and a half, I think, yeah.
Million, three maybe. That's off the top of my head.
Tomorrow, highway, sharp highway. Tomorrow.
Public Works, Public Works Highway, Highway, Cemetery, Biskie Beach, traffic and street lights, and then, debt service, and I think the community service and betterment. We'll have an update on who submitted requests so far from provider agency tomorrow.
Everybody good?
Larry? I'll make a motion.
Stanley, motion adjourned. Do I have a second? Second. Lee, you can second that one.
All right, sorry. Everything's like, yeah.
Larry.